Hi trainers, how's it going? I hope you're having wonderful games. Today we'll be going through an updated tier list and what is currently the best Pokemon to use at the moment. Disclaimer, tier lists are heavily opinionated. You may not agree with me and that's perfectly okay. I just want to keep this space an open discussion, so please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'm Teeds, I played MOBAs for over 9 years and my goal is to help you become the very best like no one ever was. Greedent was released in the October patch, and with that patch, we see some nerfs and buffs to some of the best and worst Pokemon. So where does this place them? Okay trainers, sit back, relax, and let's talk about every single Pokemon. Here is my previous tier list for reference. First up we have Venusaur. Venusaur used to be super weak, but they buffed it a lot and it became one of the most devastating Pokemon, being able to take on multiple enemies on its own and sustain super well. Recently, Venusaur has seen some nerfs to its Giga Drain, with its healing and damage taken reduced. Venusaur's Solar Beam has also been buffed. So the goal of this nerf is to obviously reduce this powerful move, and they want to buff Solar Beam to bring diversity to its moveset since no one was really going Solar Beam anymore. Venusaur in my previous tier list was S tier, and honestly, in my opinion, it is still S tier. Venusaur doesn't feel super different to me. I personally still dominate in my games with it, and it just still feels the same, honestly. The nerfs weren't huge, it was actually very minor number-wise, so that's probably why Venusaur just still feels a bit too strong. Next, we have Mr. Mime. So Mr. Mime hasn't really changed from its spot, so I'm going to keep it in A tier. It can do a ton for the team, it can also do a scary amount of damage as a support, and Mr. Mime, especially in the right hands, can set up really well for a team fight so well. And honestly, good Mr. Mime players are definitely up there on the Pokemon that scare me the most. Next we have Snorlax. Snorlax is still such a reliable defender and I'll be leaving it in A tier. It used to be S tier, but with the meta shifting a bit from nerfs and buffs, Snorlax fell slightly down, but still wreaks havoc in competitive play. However, it is one of the defenders that are too hard to solo queue with due to how reliant it is with its team. That goes for pretty much most supporters too, but there are defenders who can do well in solo queue, and I just feel like Snorlax is one of the strongest defenders, but I can understand why it's difficult to solo queue with Snorlax, and I feel like it's strongest with a coordinated team. Next we have Gardevoir. Gardevoir is someone I really want to see buffs to, and I'm sad that they didn't buff it in the recent October patch. Gardevoir struggles to reach its power spike, and this game is so fast paced that I feel that it needs to be earlier, or they need to buff its early game. And in solo queue, it kind of feels like you're against your team as well for the first half of it, because you are pretty much fighting for the last hits to reach your levels. So I will be leaving Gardevoir in C tier. It can really do a lot when it reaches that spike, but if the enemies keep you from reaching it, Gardevoir is really going to have a very difficult time. Next we have Absol. Absol is another one of my favorite speedsters, but admittedly, I have been enjoying other Pokemon's playstyles a lot more recently, so it's been a while since I've used Absol. Absol received some buffs in the patch before, and it did help Absol and took it out of a previously lower tier. Absol is not the best speedster, but it is a lot more forgiving to use over Gengar due to its ease of play and gets its power spike super early. I do feel that it falls off late game and kind of struggles there once Pokemon are a lot more tankier and stronger, so I will be leaving Absol in a low B tier, but personally for me it's low B to high C. Next we have Garchomp. Garchomp again has received some buffs, and I think it's the Pokemon that has received the most buffs, but again, even though it has received buffs, it still is struggling in the meta and competitively, and a lot of it has to do with its early game, which they have touched a bit before, but it still wasn't enough. In my experience, I feel like Garchomp is super squishy, takes a long time to reach its power spike and struggles early. I do feel that it is in a lot healthier spot, but still not enough to bring it out. So I'm going to be putting Garchomp in D tier. I'm really sorry to those who make Garchomp, but I want all Pokemon to be in a balanced position, and I want to see Garchomp used competitively and work well in very high competitive because I think it's such a fun Pokemon. This is just a general outlook. There are super good Garchomp players, but I think now that I've played Garchomp a bit more, I think the biggest issue to me is just its health and defenses. I feel like it's just so easy to take that Pokemon down, and it is also really easy to kite it around too. Next we have Lucario. So Lucario has received some nerfs. Lucario is my main all-rounder and I play it quite a lot, so Lucario's damage has been nerfed by around 3%. Not that much, but the bigger nerf to Lucario is to its passive. So usually its passive gives it a shield and movement speed after reaching 50% health, and this made Lucario so hard to take down. Lucario was able to go into fights and get out without a care in the world. It's been nerfed from happening to every 30 seconds to every 60 seconds, so a huge nerf to the time there, and I actually do feel it in my gameplay. I feel that Lucario now needs more decision making in when to go in, and you can punish Lucario more if it goes in at the wrong time. Previously, I had Lucario in S tier, however now I will be placing Lucario in A tier. Still the best all-rounder in my opinion and so strong, but the nerf did do some things to its survivability. Next we have Sylveon. Sylveon is S tier. Next we have Greedent. I'm just kidding. So Sylveon was super strong when it was released and it got nerfed within 2 days. So if it was still in that state, I'd say Sylveon was S tier. But because of the nerf, I would say it's in A tier. As a Sylveon main, I'm happy with where it's at. For me personally, I don't feel like it's overpowered or anything like that. I actually feel like it's pretty balanced. So Sylveon to me is in a healthy spot. Next we have Greedent. So Greedent is, and probably a very unpopular opinion on this, and a lot of you think that Greedent is OP at the moment, but personally I haven't had a ton of issues so far and I've been going against a lot of Greedents. I just want to keep these tier lists like very honest with how I feel, and honestly it might still just be too early where Greedent sits. At the moment Greedent has a bug, it's not supposed to do it I'm pretty sure, but there is a bug where Belch is used faster than it should be. The studios has already been contacted, hopefully they will fix it soon, but at the moment Belch I think is stronger than it should be. They're not the damage numbers, just with how often you can use it. Don't get me wrong though, like I do think this Pokemon is in a strong position, but because of this bug it's really hard to say how extremely strong it is because a lot of the complaints seem to do with Belch and its Unite move. I do feel that Belch needs to be nerfed. The damage do be kind of nutty, but then again, maybe it's the cooldowns that need to be nerfed. I'm not too sure. Greedent does have incredible Objective Secure and Shred, so I do think it's pretty early to say where Greedent sits, and the bug might actually be the reason why it's so on and off. But for me, I haven't had personal issues for it, so to me it's between a high B tier to an A tier, so I'm going to place it in A tier for now and see where it goes. Personally, I don't struggle against Greedent too much, but I can see where the struggles come from and I understand why. Why I do struggle with Greedent is just its COVID speed. I cannot for the life of me chase that Pokemon down, it's so fast. In terms of its survivability, this Pokemon 100% has such high survivability, but I just have won a lot of games against it by stealing its berries. Luckily for me, I was always playing Pokemon with dashes like Lucario when I went against Greedent, but it is incredibly hard to 1v1 that Pokemon because it just survives everything. I do have a bunch of counters that I'll be talking about in Greedent's hidden mechanics video, so if that's something that interests you, feel free to subscribe and click the bell. Next we have Crustle. So Crustle, not much has changed for this both cute and scary little bug. It's also a defender that can just take you down, but it does require more effort than some of the other defenders. Crustle is super tanky and hard to take down as well. I find Crustle to be in a good spot. Not the best, but not the worst. I haven't seen it in a game in a very long time on my servers, and I'm not sure why, but I'll be leaving Crustle in B tier. Next we have Greninja. Greninja has received some buffs and nerfs over the past patches. No changes in the recent patch. Hasn't really changed that much, but with some of the other speedsters now being pretty strong, we don't see a lot of Greninjas in the jungle anymore. Greninja for me stays in A tier. Next we have Talonflame. Talonflame has received some buffs in the past patches, nothing recent, and it's incredibly strong at the moment, going from one of the worst speedsters in Pokemon Unite's earlier stages to now just being super powerful. Talonflame deals a ton of damage at the moment, it's hard to catch and take down. I will be leaving Talonflame in A tier. Next we have Charizard. Charizard has also received buffs and changes, and I do feel like it is in a better place. Not the best place, but it's a lot better for me. It's one of the weaker Pokemon though. It can still deal a ton of damage. Its Unite move is just super strong. Like, I find Charizard so hard to take down its Unite move. Like, literally when Charizard is in its Unite move, I'm just like, I'm my head out. I'll be leaving Charizard in B tier. Next, we have Zeraora. Zeraora is insane. I have no idea why they keep buffing it, and in the recent patch, I think a bug got fixed where Wild Charge deals too much damage, but then they released it with it doing triple the damage. However, they have fixed it now. So Zeraora is definitely someone's favorite up there, and yeah, I'll be leaving Zeraora in S tier. I feel that it is the strongest speedster at the moment. It has the capabilities to take down multiple Pokemon on its own easily. Next we have Cinderace. So I originally placed Cinderace between S and A tier, but I left it in A tier. However, now that the time has passed, I feel that Cinderace is in S tier. The Pyro Ball changes had made such a pretty big impact. There is just constant big damage coming from Cinderace, and for me, it took over Greninja's spot in the jungle as well. It just does so much damage, its attack speed is fast, Cinderace can melt other Pokemon so quickly at the moment. Next we have Eldegoss. Eldegoss is such a strong support and has received a nerf a while ago, but still remains pretty strong. It heals and shields are unbeatable. Leaf Tornado is also pretty strong at the moment, and I will just be keeping Eldegoss in high A tier. Next we have Cramorant. I got flack for this in my last video and I understand, but this is just my opinion and I still have to keep Cramorant in B tier. B tier is not a bad tier, it's a good place to be. They've nerfed Cramorant over a few different patches, they felt it was too strong and it used to be actually very strong. I still feel that it is strong, its early game is incredible, but I feel like it starts to struggle in the late game in comparison to other attackers. While it has a strong Unite move, they did nerf it and a lot of the time I literally just attack Cramorant while it's in Unite move, and not all the time, but most of the time I can take down Cramorant during its Unite move. This is just from like a solo queue perspective. In competitive, I do think Cramorant does better, but it feels like Cramorant needs a team to work around it. So I will be keeping Cramorant in B tier, but it's not a bad tier. Next we have Blastoise. So Blastoise is one of the Pokemon who received nerfs and buffs. Its Unite move received a big nerf with a 21% damage reduction, and Hydro Pump also received a damage reduction. Water Spout however got a buff and its cooldown has been reduced. So I put a lot of Blastoise after the nerf. It definitely feels weaker, but it didn't feel like it's in a bad place. The Unite move, to me, it still feels very useful in team fights and it still feels very tanky. However, I do feel like Blastoise is not an S tier anymore, so I will be placing Blastoise in A tier. Next we have Pikachu. Pikachu has received some buffs as well, and that is to Thunder and Volt Tackle. I do think they did this because of build diversity, like everyone usually went the other moveset, and these buffs do feel nice. I absolutely love Pikachu and I'm happy to die to Pikachu. I still feel it has a very strong early game, and I do feel like it kind of falls late game, so I'll be leaving Pikachu in a very high B tier to low A tier, because I have been seeing it more in competitive, which is really nice to see. However, I do think it just doesn't compete against Greninja or Cinderace. Next we have Ninetales. Ninetales used to be one of the strongest attacker supporter hybrid Pokemon in the game. With the current state of the game, the recent buffs and nerfs, Pokemon additions, I feel that Ninetales is actually falling off at the moment. I don't really see Ninetales being played that often anymore. In my personal opinion, there are just better Pokemon at the moment who offer more damage and crowd control than Ninetales, so I unfortunately will be placing Ninetales from A tier to B tier. Next we have Wigglytuff. Wigglytuff used to be considered a bad support, but then they Wiggly buffed the heck out of it, and it continues to ruin lives to this day. It's pretty tanky and has a great amount of crowd control. It's a super aggressive support playstyle, and I'll be leaving Wiggly buff in A tier. Next we have Slowbro. Slowbro is one of my favorite defenders, and it did get nerfed a few times. I just feel like it has a bit behind in comparison to other defenders like Blastoise and Snorlax, but I do feel that it offers something different next to Crustle. Slowbro actually also got buffed this patch, and it's to its move Amnesia. I think this is for build diversity, so I'm in a weird spot with Slowbro personally. I placed it in C tier originally, but I feel that it kind of bounces for me between B and C, so I'm just going to place it in B tier for now. I love Slowbro's Unite move. I think it can almost stop everything, if not all things. It is a bit more single targeted though in comparison to other defenders, which is why I am bouncing between the two tiers. Next we have Machamp. I honestly feel like I need to play a ton of games of Machamp because I always feel confused about this Pokemon. Also, I like to mention that in my last tier list, I said that I'd never seen Machamp in my games, and after I uploaded that, there was a Machamp in every single game I played. I don't know what this means. I will say that Machamp is just in a really weird spot, like it has received buffs in the past, if I remember correctly, and then it wasn't really talked about after that. I feel like Machamp is still in C tier for me. I feel that it is more viable than Garchomp, but I just don't feel very threatened by Machamp at the moment. However, a good Machamp can still destroy you. I do have some bad memories from the early stages of Pokemon Unite. Next up we have Blissey. Blissey can be hard to take down. I love its build diversity, it's one of my favorite supporters to play in Pokemon Unite, and I'm going to leave it in A tier. It's nice that supporters are on a good spot, really makes up for a different team comps to use. Next we have Mamoswine. Mamoswine, I originally placed it in A tier, but now that it's been a while, I have a better idea of where Mamoswine sits, and unfortunately, I feel that it will be going down to B tier. So Mamoswine, what I found is that it's just pretty slow and some of the moves and targeting feel awkward. I do feel that Mamoswine had one of the weaker releases and also lacks damage in comparison to other defenders. I think that Mamoswine needs buffs, and I'd like to see it in more games. I had a ton of fun playing it, but I just feel like in comparison to other defenders at the moment, they are a lot stronger. Next we have Gengar. Gengar was also a Pokemon that has received buffs, and my take seems to be a pretty controversial one, which I wish I could have explained more in my video. This is going to be my super hot take, and maybe it'll get me some flack in the comments, but it's just my opinion and I want to be 100% honest about how I feel. Some players think Gengar is the worst Pokemon in the game, and this was around the time I put Gengar in A tier. I like to keep my mind completely open, so I listen to other people's opinions, I've read comments, etc. I personally am not a Gengar Hex and Sludge Bomb user, which used to be a super strong moveset and now it's not so much. I think this moveset is pretty weak and I feel there needs to be a buff there for sure. But I think some of the people tend to think about this moveset when they talk about Gengar and compare it to its OP state in the early stages of the game. I use Dream Eater and Shadow Ball, and I do pretty well with it. I didn't start playing Gengar until after its huge nerf, and Gengar is a lot more mechanically difficult in my personal opinion. It's very decision heavy in comparison to other speedsters because Gengar does get punished quite easily if you make a mistake. So I understand why a lot, and I mean a lot of tier lists place Gengar in a very low tier, but I just don't share the same feelings and reasonings. I play a lot of Gengar, it's one of my most played Pokemon, and maybe that's why I feel this way. I don't feel like it's the worst Pokemon in the game. Like, to me, Gengar still feels like an assassin type with a very different playstyle, which is something I enjoy. Whereas, I'm sorry to Garchomp players, but whereas Garchomp just feels too squishy for an all-rounder and feels like it shouldn't die as quickly as it does considering its role. So I do think Garchomp needs a buff in its health or defenses. However, I have looked at it on both sides, and in comparison to other speedsters, I agree that other speedsters can do a lot more with a lot less punishment. Take Talonflame and Zeraora for example. Gengar has received some buffs, and I feel this buff benefits Gengar more with a Sludge Bomb and Hex moveset since you can proc it so many times. I do feel that it helps survivability, but at the end of the day, other speedsters can still do more in team fights much more easily. Plus, I also don't really like the targeting of this moveset. So I will be bringing Gengar down from A tier and place it in a high C but low B tier, just because generally I do agree that Talonflame and Zeraora bring more to team fights. I feel that Gengar does need more buffs to be on par with these other Pokemon, but the playstyle is something that works for me. I enjoy it. I actually do a lot better on Gengar than I do with Zeraora and Talonflame, and that's because I just play Gengar so much. So when I think about it from a new to Gengar playstyle, I can understand why it's so difficult. Gengar, in my opinion, is just a very decision-heavy Pokemon. Okay, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, and we have reached the end. What do you trainers think about the current state of the Pokemon in Pokemon Unite? I'm looking forward to reading your opinions. That is all for today's video. Liking the video would really help me out. Thank you so much for watching, trainers. Bye!